Did this cleaning girl just say she speaks 6 languages? Richard Sterling's laughter cut through the presidential suite like a blade. He didn't even glance up from his $300 per ounce caviar as he waved his hand dismissively. Honey, the only language you need to know is, yes, sir, and your towels are ready. Now get back to scrubbing toilets where you belong. The 12 international diplomats around the mahogany table fell, silent. The smell of expensive cologne couldn't mask the stench of casual cruelty. Keisha Williams stood frozen in the doorway of the Grand Meridian Hotel's most exclusive suite, her pressed uniform suddenly feeling like a target. Her worn portfolio trembled in her hands as Sterling's platinum cufflinks caught the light with each dismissive gesture. Have you ever been so underestimated that people couldn't see your potential when it was staring them in the face? 11:30 at night? The Grand Meridian's 42nd floor hummed with the quiet efficiency of a 5-star hotel after midnight. Keisha Williams pushed her housekeeping cart down the marble hallway, each wheel squeaking softly against the polished floor. At 25, she had perfected the art of being invisible. 3 jobs, grandmother's cancer treatments, a PhD in international relations abandoned 6 credits from graduation when the medical bills started flooding in. The oak doors of the presidential suite muffled voices, but panic has a way of seeping through even the finest wood. If we can't find someone who understands these cultural nuances by morning, $3 billion in climate funding dies, and we look like fools on the world stage. Sterling's voice cracked with desperation. Keisha paused, her master key trembling in her hand. Each mistranslation escalated tensions. The Japanese delegation feels dishonored. German representatives think we're deceiving them. French ambassadors believe we're dismissing them entirely. The Arabic nations feel culturally misunderstood. The global climate summit was collapsing, 6 nations preparing to walk away. All because no one could bridge the spaces between languages, between hearts, between cultures. Keisha's grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Baby, silence never changed the world. She knocked softly. The voices inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The door cracked open, revealing Sterling's exhausted face. Excuse me, sir. Her voice stayed steady despite her racing heart. I couldn't help but overhear. I speak Japanese, German, French, Arabic, Mandarin, and Spanish fluently, and I understand the cultural protocols that got lost in translation. Sterling's bloodshot eyes widened. Behind him, 12 crisis managers looked up from their scattered papers and cold coffee. The Japanese weren't being difficult about timelines, Keisha continued, switching seamlessly between languages as she spoke. They were trying to preserve honor while expressing serious concerns. The German efficiency complaints were actually about respect for process. The Arabic hospitality violations happened because nobody understood the greeting protocols. Sterling's mouth fell open. You have one chance to prove it. 7 a.m. The hotel's private conference room buzzed with the nervous energy of men who had spent fortunes and couldn't buy success. Marble gleamed under crystal chandeliers. 12 international representatives stared at screens showing 6 different capital cities. Keisha entered wearing the same pressed uniform, wrinkled now from her overnight shift. Her portfolio looked shabby next to the leather briefcases scattered around the mahogany table. Whispers rippled in multiple languages. This is Sterling's solution? A housekeeping girl? Has he lost his mind completely? Sterling ignored them, his desperation overriding his pride. The screens flickered to life. Ambassador Yamamoto appeared from Tokyo, his face stone-cold with barely contained fury. Chancellor Weber materialized from Berlin, arms crossed in stern disapproval. Gentlemen, Sterling's voice cracked slightly. This is Keisha Williams. She believes she can repair the cultural damage from yesterday's misunderstandings. Weber's laugh held no warmth. You bring us a hotel employee? Yamamoto spoke rapidly in Japanese, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. The other diplomats shifted uncomfortably, not understanding but feeling the anger. Keisha stepped forward. Her voice remained calm as she responded in flawless Japanese, her tone carrying the proper honorific levels that immediately caught Yamamoto's attention. Honorable Ambassador Yamamoto, I understand your frustration. Yesterday's translator missed that when you said yes, we agree to consider. You were actually expressing serious reservations about the timeline while trying to maintain diplomatic courtesy. In Japanese business culture, direct disagreement can seem disrespectful, so you were trying to signal concerns without causing offense. Yamamoto's eyebrows shot up. He responded in Japanese, faster this time, testing her. Keisha smiled slightly. You're asking where I learned to understand the space between words. My grandmother taught me that every language carries the heart of its people. Weber interrupted in rapid German, his words clipped with Teutonic precision. Without missing a beat, Keisha switched languages mid-sentence. Chancellor Weber, your concerns about efficiency weren't actually about speed. They were about respect for German engineering processes that have worked for generations. When our translator kept pushing for faster decisions, it felt like dismissing German expertise. The sound of the keyboards stopped. Coffee grew cold. 12 executives leaned forward in their chairs. Keisha continued, addressing Weber in German. You were trying to explain that German precision requires time for proper evaluation, but the translation made it sound like stubbornness. Weber's stern expression softened into something approaching respect. Then came the real test. Yamamoto spoke again in Japanese, but this time in classical diplomatic form, SODs, a style most interpreters wouldn't even recognize. Keisha's eyes lit up. She bowed slightly while responding, her Japanese shifting into the formal registers reserved for high-level negotiations. You quoted from 12th century Japanese environmental philosophy, she said, switching back to English for the room's benefit. The poem is about harmony between human progress and natural balance. You're testing whether Americans can understand that climate action isn't just about technology, it's about respecting the wisdom of living in harmony with nature. Yamamoto's stern mask cracked. For the first time in months of failed negotiations, he smiled. Keisha turned to the room, her voice gaining confidence. And now you're expecting me to respond with something that shows I understand the deeper meaning. She paused, letting the moment build. Then she recited a classical German poem in Weber's native language, Whatever Do Is Native, verses about environmental stewardship that paralleled the Japanese philosophy, but came from a completely different cultural tradition. Weber nodded slowly, genuine appreciation replacing skepticism. The screens showed something that hadn't happened in months of negotiations. Both Yamamoto and Weber looked interested instead of irritated. Sterling's mouth hung open. His expensive consultant stared in stunned silence. This isn't just a translation, whispered one diplomat. She's building bridges, murmured another. Yamamoto bowed slightly through the video screen, an unprecedented gesture of respect toward a non-diplomat. Through the speakers came Weber's voice, now warm with possibility. Now, let's discuss the real problems we've been dancing around. As the negotiation paused for technical adjustments, Keisha's hand moved unconsciously to her uniform pocket. The worn notebook inside felt warm against her fingers, pages filled with her grandmother's handwriting in 6 different languages. Flashes of memory painted themselves across her mind. A small apartment in Brooklyn. Her grandmother, Evelyn Williams, came home at dawn after cleaning hotel rooms for 40 years. Hands cracked from industrial soap, but eyes bright with stories from around the world. Baby girl, Grandmother Evelyn would say, switching between English and Spanish as she unpacked the languages she'd collected from hotel guests. Every language is a bridge between hearts. You learn enough bridges, you can connect any 2 people on Earth. Keisha had learned Japanese from anime late at night after homework, German from exchange students at the community center, Arabic from the mosque down the street where she volunteered, French from online communities, Mandarin from her neighbor Mr. Liu, who taught her in exchange for helping with his citizenship papers. Each language was a promise to her grandmother. A promise that the woman who cleaned other people's messes for 4 decades had raised something bigger than herself. Full scholarship to Georgetown. International Relations PhD within reach. The future is glowing bright as polished marble. Then came the diagnosis. Stage 3 breast cancer. Treatment costs that swallow dreams like a black hole swallows light. Keisha had dropped out 6 credits from graduation. No hesitation, no regret. Every language I learned was a promise to my grandmother, she whispered to herself, watching Yamamoto and Weber's faces on the screens. That her invisible sacrifices would build something visible. The notebook in her pocket contained more than language lessons. It held sayings about dignity, worth, and seeing the unseen. Written in her grandmother's careful script across 6 languages, from many voices, 1 harmony. Tucked between the pages was something else, medical bills totaling $180,000. The weight of generational struggle carried in calloused but gentle hands. Keisha didn't want revenge against people like Sterling. She wanted something deeper. She wanted the world to see that brilliance lived everywhere, in cleaning ladies and night janitors, in hotel maids and hospital workers, in every invisible person whose dreams got buried under the weight of just surviving. The screens flickered back to life. Time to build those bridges. The screen stabilized. Yamamoto's face appeared crystal clear from Tokyo, his expression unreadable as carved stone. Weber leaned forward from Berlin, fingers steepled in calculation. Miss Williams, Yamamoto's voice carried the weight of centuries of diplomatic tradition. Before we proceed with matters of such global importance, there is a courtesy test. Sterling shifted nervously. His crisis managers exchanged worried glances. Everyone understood that diplomatic courtesy tests could end negotiations permanently. In Japanese business culture, Yamamoto continued, we have a saying. I will recite it in our classical diplomatic form. If you can interpret not just the words but the deeper meaning, we may continue. If not. He didn't need to finish. $3 billion hung in the balance. Yamamoto's voice shifted into classical Japanese, F.E., formal, ancient, layered with meaning that modern translators often missed entirely. The words flowed like poetry, each syllable carrying weight. The room held its breath. Sterling's knuckles went white, gripping his chair. Keisha closed her eyes briefly, letting the words wash over her. When she opened them, understanding lit her face like sunrise. Honorable Ambassador, she began in the same classical Japanese, her pronunciation flawless. You quoted from 12th century environmental philosophy. The poem speaks of the mountain that bends with wind but never breaks, of water that shapes stone through patience, not force. Yamamoto's eyebrows rose fractionally, high praise in Japanese diplomatic circles. Keisha continued, switching to English for the room's benefit. But the deeper meaning isn't about nature. You're testing whether Americans can understand that true climate action requires humility, that we must bend like the mountain, adapting to natural wisdom instead of forcing nature to adapt to us. A ghost of a smile touched Yamamoto's lips. You're asking whether we can approach this partnership with respect for traditional knowledge, not just modern technology. Weber leaned closer to his camera, intrigued despite himself. Keisha paused, feeling the weight of the moment. Then she did something unexpected. She recited a classical German poem, verses about environmental stewardship that echoed the Japanese philosophy but came from Black Forest traditions dating back centuries. Weber's eyes widened. The poem wasn't in textbooks. It was folk wisdom, passed down through generations of German foresters. Where did you? Weber started, then caught himself. You understand that our concerns about rushing into climate action come from our engineering tradition. We believe in solutions that last generations, not quick fixes that fail. Keisha nodded. Both cultures value wisdom over speed, long-term thinking over short-term gains. The Japanese mountain that bends with wind, the German foundation built to last centuries. Something shifted in the room's energy. The screens showed what hadn't happened in months of failed negotiations. Both Yamamoto and Weber looked genuinely interested instead of politely irritated. Sterling's expensive consultants stared in amazement. They'd been trying to push through agreements while Keisha was building understanding. Yamamoto performed a slight bow through the video screen, a gesture of respect so rare that several diplomats gasped audibly. Miss Williams! His voice carried new warmth. You have passed our courtesy test. More importantly, you have shown that bridges can be built between any two cultures when someone takes time to understand both sides deeply. Weber nodded approvingly. Perhaps now we can discuss the real challenges instead of dancing around surface issues. The energy in the room crackled with possibility. For the first time in months, hope felt tangible. But Keisha could feel eyes boring into her back. Not everyone was pleased with her success. The moment the screens went dark for recess, Patricia Blackwood's manicured nails clicked against the marble table like a predator's claws. The general manager of the Grand Meridian had built her career on maintaining proper standards, and watching a housekeeping girl address world leaders was shattering her carefully constructed world. Richard! Her voice could have frozen champagne. A word, now. Sterling reluctantly followed her to the corner. but their whispers carried across the marble acoustics. You cannot seriously consider putting the help in charge of international diplomacy. Blackwood's eyes flashed with barely contained horror. What will our guests think? What will the board say? This is a 5-star establishment, not some diversity experiment. Sterling's crisis managers huddled nearby, their voices a symphony of doubt. Where exactly did she get her education? Dr. Harrison, Sterling's chief diplomat, adjusted his Harvard tie. I've never heard of someone with her background having these qualifications. This is quite different from her usual responsibilities, added Margaret Thornton, Sterling's senior advisor. Folding towels doesn't exactly prepare someone for multi-billion-dollar negotiations. Keisha pretended to organize her notebook, but every word felt like a slap. The familiar sting of being extraordinary yet invisible burned in her chest. Blackwood's voice rose despite her attempts at discretion. Richard, think about appearances. These are heads of state. They expect to deal with FT people of appropriate standing, not the staff. She probably learned those languages from YouTube videos. Harrison scoffed. There's a difference between conversational ability and diplomatic expertise. Do we even know if she has security clearance? Thornton whispered loudly. Background checks? Proper credentials? This could be a disaster waiting to happen. Sterling stood silent, caught between his desperate need for results and the weight of his social circle's expectations. Besides, Blackwood continued, her voice dripping with false concern, we're putting enormous pressure on this poor girl. Surely she'd be more comfortable returning to work she's qualified for. We could give her a nice bonus for her efforts. The microaggressions hung in the air like poisonous clouds. I'm just saying, Harrison added, this isn't some feel-good movie. These are real consequences, real money, real international relations. We need someone with actual experience, not good intentions. Keisha's hands tightened on her grandmother's notebook. Every dismissive word was a language she'd learned to speak fluently, the language of being underestimated, overlooked, assumed incapable. But Sterling's silence hurt more than their words. The man who just watched her accomplish what his experts couldn't was now questioning whether to trust her. Look, Thornton's voice took on a patronizing tone. I'm sure she means well, but let's be realistic about qualifications and expectations. There are protocols, procedures. This isn't about prejudice, it's about professionalism. The word professionalism, that polite mask that prejudice wore to dinner parties and board meetings. Keisha felt the familiar weight of carrying dreams that seemed too big for the body that held them. The same feeling she'd had walking into Georgetown classrooms where professors looked surprised to see her. The same sensation from job interviews where qualifications somehow weren't quite enough. Blackwood delivered her final blow. Richard, I'm calling the board. This has gone far enough. We need someone more suitable before this becomes an international embarrassment. The screens flickered back to life. Yamamoto and Weber were returning, expecting to continue with their new bridge builder. Sterling looked at Keisha, then at his advisors, then at the billions of dollars and international relationships hanging in the balance. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone in the room. The screens blazed back to life, but something had shifted. Yamamoto's face appeared tense. Weber looked frustrated. The French delegation had joined the call, Ambassador Dubois' expression thunderous. Mr. Sterling, Yamamoto's voice carried a new formality. We have received concerning reports about the competency of your negotiation team. Our governments are questioning whether to proceed. Sterling's blood drained from his face. What reports? Weber leaned forward grimly. Word has reached Berlin that you are using unqualified personnel for matters of international significance. Our engineering ministry is reconsidering the entire partnership. Blackwood's satisfied smile flickered across her lips. She'd made her calls during the break. Ambassador Dubois spoke for the first time, his French accent thick with disdain. Paris has been informed that this summit lacks proper diplomatic protocols. We are prepared to withdraw our participation entirely. The room erupted in panicked whispers. $3 billion evaporating in real time, years of climate cooperation dissolving like sugar in rain. Sterling's advisors scrambled for damage control, but their bureaucratic responses only made things worse. Perhaps we could arrange for proper credentials to be reviewed, Harrison stammered. There may have been communication errors, Thornton added desperately. Yamamoto's expression hardened further. Communication errors are exactly what we cannot afford in climate negotiations. Keisha watched the collapse unfold, feeling the familiar ache of being dismissed just when her value became clear. But then she noticed something the others missed. Weber wasn't angry about qualifications. His body language showed confusion, not contempt. Dubois wasn't offended by protocols. He looked genuinely curious about what he'd heard. Yamamoto's formal tone carried a question, not a conclusion. They weren't rejecting her. They were testing the room's commitment to her. Keisha stepped forward, ignoring Blackwood's sharp intake of breath. "Honorable ambassadors," she began, addressing each in their native language before switching to English. "I understand you've received concerning information. May I address your specific worries directly?" Weber spoke first, his German measured and careful. "We heard that this negotiation is being led by someone without diplomatic credentials. In Germany, we value proper qualifications." Keisha nodded respectfully. "Chancellor Weber, you're absolutely right to value qualifications. My qualification isn't a certificate on a wall. It's understanding that when you say efficiency concerns, you're actually expressing that German engineering wisdom shouldn't be rushed. That your culture's methodical approach has created solutions that last centuries, not decades." Weber's posture shifted. He looked intrigued rather than offended. Dubois interrupted in rapid French. Keisha responded fluently, then translated. "Ambassador Dubois is concerned about diplomatic protocols being ignored. He's right. Protocol matters. That's why I addressed each of you in your native languages with proper honorifics. Because respect isn't about titles. It's about seeing the wisdom each culture brings." Yamamoto spoke carefully. "And what wisdom do you see in Japanese environmental philosophy?" "That nature teaches patience," Keisha replied in Japanese, then English. "That lasting change happens like seasons, gradually, naturally, in harmony with existing rhythms rather than fighting against them." The three ambassadors exchanged glances through their screens. Something unspoken passed between them. Dubois smiled first. "This young woman understands diplomacy better than most career diplomats." Weber nodded. "Her qualifications are proven by results, not paperwork." Yamamoto's formal mask dropped completely. "We have been testing not her abilities, but your commitment to supporting her. You have someone extraordinary. Do not let prejudice blind you to her value." The room fell silent. Sterling stared at his advisors, realization dawning. Blackwood's face went pale as she understood what had just happened. The ambassadors had been protecting Keisha, not rejecting her. Sterling stood slowly, his face cycling through shock, realization, and something that looked like shame. The silence in the room stretched taut as piano wire. "I've been in international business for 25 years, his voice cracked slightly. "I've negotiated deals worth hundreds of billions. I've worked with presidents and prime ministers." He turned to face his advisors, his crisis managers, Patricia Blackwood's expectant face. "And I've never witnessed anything like what just happened." Blackwood's smile faltered. "Three of the world's most respected ambassadors just told me that a woman I was ready to dismiss has more diplomatic skill than my entire consulting team combined." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Sterling walked toward Keisha, each step deliberate. "I almost made the biggest mistake of my career. Not the business mistake, immunisty, the human mistake." He stopped in front of her, this billionaire who commanded boardrooms and bent markets to his will. "Keisha Williams isn't just part of these negotiations anymore." His voice grew stronger, more certain. "She's leading them. And anyone who has a problem with that can explain to the board why they sabotaged a $3 billion climate deal." He began removing his custom-tailored blazer, the one with subtle diplomatic pins that marked him as a member of exclusive international circles. "This belongs to someone who actually understands diplomacy." Keisha's eyes widened as he held out the blazer. "The fabric probably cost more than her family's monthly rent." "Sir, I can't." "You can. You did. You earned it." Sterling's voice carried conviction that surprised even him. "I've spent years trying to force my way through cultural barriers. You spent 20 minutes building bridges." Through the screens, Yamamoto began a slow clap. Weber joined him. Dubois nodded approvingly. "We have been waiting months for someone who could truly hear us," Yamamoto said. "Miss Williams, you have our complete confidence." The transformation in the room was palpable. Thornton and Harrison stood straighter, realizing the political winds had shifted permanently. Hotel staff had gathered in the hallway, word spreading through the building's invisible networks. Blackwood tried one last desperate play. "Richard, surely we should follow proper procedures." "The proper procedure," Sterling cut her off, "is supporting excellence when we find it." "Which we did, which I almost threw away because I listened to prejudice disguised as protocol." He turned back to Keisha. "What do you need to save this summit?" Keisha felt the weight of the blazer in her hands, the warmth of recognition she'd waited her whole life to feel. Not gratitude for charity, but respect for competence. Time to listen to each culture's real concerns, space to build trust instead of pushing agreements. And the understanding that this isn't about America getting what we want, it's about 6 cultures finding what we all need. Sterling nodded. "Then that's exactly what you'll have." The screens showed 3 ambassadors who looked genuinely excited for the first time in months. "Now," Weber said with the first smile he'd shown all day. "Shall we begin the real work?" During the break, as Sterling's team scrambled to prepare new frameworks, Ambassador Yamamoto's image remained on screen. Instead of the formal diplomatic mask, his face showed genuine curiosity. "Miss Williams," he said in perfect English, his accent barely perceptible. "Your grandmother, she taught you more than languages, didn't she?" Keisha paused, surprised by the personal question. She glanced around the room, then pulled out her worn notebook. "She taught me that every person carries stories worth hearing." Keisha opened to a page filled with careful handwriting in 6 languages. These are sayings she collected from hotel guests over 40 years. Wisdom from every culture she encountered. Yamamoto leaned closer to his camera. "May I hear one?" Keisha's finger traced a line written in her grandmother's careful script. In Japanese, "The nail that stands out gets hammered down, but the root that grows deep moves mountains." Something flickered across Yamamoto's face. Recognition, then emotion. Your grandmother understood something many diplomats never learn. That strength and humility can exist in the same person. Through the screen, Weber had been listening. "My father cleaned government buildings at night while studying engineering. He used to say that people who work with their hands see problems differently than people who only work with their minds." The formal distance between countries began dissolving into human connection. "My grandfather," Yamamoto continued, his voice softer now, "was a translator who helped rebuild Japan-America relations after the war. He always said that peace begins when people stop talking past each other and start talking to each other." Keisha felt tears threatening. "Your grandfather and my grandmother would have understood each other perfectly, I think," Weber added quietly. "They are understanding each other now, through you." Ambassador Dubois, who had been quietly observing, spoke for the first time without diplomatic formality. "My grandmother also cleaned hotels, in Marseille. She taught me that dignity isn't about what job you do, but how you do it." The conference room had gone completely still. 3 world leaders sharing family stories with a woman they'd met hours ago. Yamamoto reached off screen and returned with something in his hands, a paper crane, folded with precise care. "This is made from hotel stationery," he said, holding it up to the camera. "For your grandmother's wisdom, passed through you to us." Keisha's eyes filled. She would have loved knowing her words built bridges between countries. "They have," Weber said simply. "And now we build something lasting with them." The human moment hung in the air like incense, sacred and transformative. But greater challenges were coming. The final day dawned gray over Manhattan, matching the tension that filled the Grand Meridian's ballroom. Representatives from 6 nations had arrived in person for what should have been a triumphant signing ceremony. Instead, chaos erupted at 6 a.m. Sterling burst into Keisha's prep room, his face ashen. "We've been hacked." The words hit like physical blows. Behind him, crisis managers carried laptops showing the damage spreading across international news networks. "Everything," Sterling continued, his voice hollow. "Every private diplomatic communication from the past month. Every real opinion, every honest doubt, every behind-the-scenes conversation." Keisha's stomach dropped as she scrolled through the leaked messages on the nearest screen. German internal memo. "Japanese environmental priorities seem more about cultural ceremony than practical results." Japanese private assessment. "German efficiency demands feel dismissive of Asian wisdom traditions." French diplomatic cable. Americans appear more interested in Sterling's profit margins than actual climate action. Arabic Nations Confidential Report. Western partners treat traditional ecological knowledge as primitive superstition. Chinese intelligence brief. Offer superior terms immediately. Western alliance appears fractured beyond repair. The ballroom below buzzed with angry voices in 6 languages. Phones rang constantly as capitals received reports. Security teams surrounded each delegation as trust disintegrated in real time. "They're all threatening to walk," Sterling said, running his hands through his hair. Yamamoto feels betrayed. Weber thinks we've been manipulating them. Dubois believes the whole summit was American theater. The Arabic delegation is calling it cultural imperialism. Through the windows, Keisha could see protesters gathering. Environmental activists held signs reading "failure" and "another broken promise." News vans lined the street like vultures. "Chinese competitors arrived an hour ago," Sterling continued. "They're offering better terms, no cultural complications, faster implementation, everything we can't match." The weight of global climate action rested on Keisha's shoulders. Billions of dollars, international cooperation, the planet's future, her family's security, all hanging by threads that seemed to snap with each leaked message. She closed her eyes, hearing her grandmother's voice. "Baby, when bridges burn, you don't run. You build new ones from the ashes." "Bring them all together," Keisha said quietly. "What?" "All 6 delegations, 1 room, face to face." Her voice grew stronger. "If we're going to fail, let's fail honestly. If we're going to succeed, it starts with truth." Sterling stared at her. "Keisha, they're furious. Putting them together now could start an international incident. The incident has already started. Now we deal with it." 2 hours later, the ballroom felt like a powder keg. 6 delegations sat at separate tables, their body language screaming mistrust. The media filled the balcony above. Sterling's board members watched from the sides, calculating losses. Keisha walked to the center of the room. No podium, no microphone, just her voice and 6 languages worth of truth. "Honorable ambassadors," she began, addressing each in their native tongue before switching to English. "Everything you read this morning was true." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Diplomatic protocol demanded denial, deflection, damage control. "Ambassador Yamamoto, you do have concerns about German efficiency demands." "Chancellor Weber, you do question whether Japanese environmental traditions can scale globally." "Ambassador Dubois, you are right to worry about American profit motives." The room held its breath. She was confirming every leaked suspicion. "And you know what? You're all right to have those concerns." Keisha began walking between the tables, her voice carrying across marble and crystal. "Ambassador Yamamoto, your concern about German efficiency isn't prejudice, it's wisdom. You've seen what happens when environmental action ignores cultural rhythms. Chancellor Weber, your questions about traditional approaches aren't dismissive, they're practical. You need solutions that work at an industrial scale." She stopped at the French table. "Ambassador Dubois, your worry about American profits isn't cynical, it's necessary. Climate action that enriches corporations while ignoring communities isn't justice." Then, she turned to address all 6 delegations simultaneously. "For 6 months, you've been hiding these concerns behind diplomatic politeness, pretending agreement while harboring doubts, smiling through frustration. And it wasn't working." Keisha pulled out her grandmother's notebook, its worn pages catching the ballroom lights. "My grandmother cleaned hotel rooms for 40 years. She taught me that honest disagreement builds stronger foundations than false harmony." She opened a page written in 6 languages. "What if instead of hiding our differences, we used them?" The room's energy shifted as she continued. "Japanese precision for cultural sustainability, German engineering for scalable solutions, French diplomacy for international coordination, Arabic traditional knowledge for long-term thinking, Chinese innovation for rapid implementation, American resources for global deployment." Keisha began speaking directly to each delegation in their language, weaving between tongues like a conductor orchestrating a symphony. "What if your concerns aren't obstacles? They're requirements. What if every worry you expressed privately becomes a public commitment we all honor? Every worry." Yamamoto spoke first, his Japanese measured and thoughtful. Keisha translated, He says honest partnership requires honest problems, not just honest solutions. Weber nodded, responding in German. He agrees that real cooperation means admitting what we don't know, not pretending we know everything. Dubois added something in French that made the other ambassadors look intrigued. He suggests that leaked private thoughts might actually be more valuable than prepared public statements. The Arabic representative spoke for the first time all day. Keisha's face lit up as she translated. He says that in desert culture, you trust people who admit the journey is hard, not those who promise it's easy. The Chinese delegation leader stood slowly. Perhaps, he said in perfect English, honest disagreement is more valuable than dishonest agreement. The ballroom's energy crackled with possibility. Instead of hiding from the leaked conversations, they were building on them. So here's what I propose, Keisha said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. We create the first honest partnership in international climate action. Every concern becomes a requirement. Every cultural difference becomes a strength. Every private doubt becomes a public commitment to do better. Sterling stared in amazement as 6 world leaders began nodding. And Mr. Sterling's profits? Weber asked with what might have been a smile. Tied directly to measurable environmental outcomes, Keisha replied. No results, no profits. Success for the planet becomes success for everyone. The Chinese competitors, who had been watching from the corner, quietly gathered their materials and left. Honesty, it turned out, was impossible to outbid. The Grand Meridian's ballroom had been transformed into something unprecedented in diplomatic history. Instead of the usual sterile signing ceremony, each nation had created a cultural corner showcasing their environmental traditions. Japanese origami cranes made from recycled paper hung like hope from crystal chandeliers. German precision-engineered solar collectors displayed next to French sustainable wine casks. Arabic sand gardens demonstrated desert water conservation, while Chinese calligraphy scrolls proclaimed Earth stewardship in flowing brushstrokes. International media filled every available space. CNN, BBC, NHK, Deutsche Welle, RMA. The world was watching what they dubbed the Honest Climate Accord. Keisha stood at the center wearing Sterling's blazer, which had been altered overnight to fit her perfectly. In her hands, she held her grandmother's notebook, no longer hidden in her pocket but displayed with pride. Ambassador Yamamoto approached first, carrying a wooden box carved with intricate nature scenes. "Miss Williams," he said in English, his voice carrying across the room's marble acoustics. In Japanese culture, we have a concept called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, making the mended piece more beautiful than the original. He opened the box to reveal a stunning ceramic bowl, its cracks filled with gleaming gold veins. This accord was broken by leaked secrets. You helped us mend it with truth. The cracks became the strongest parts. Keisha accepted the bowl with both hands, bowing in the traditional manner. Cameras captured every moment as she responded in flawless Japanese before translating for the global audience. Ambassador Yamamoto honors us by showing that broken trust, when mended with honesty, becomes unbreakable trust. Chancellor Weber stepped forward next, his typically stern expression softened by something approaching warmth. From Germany, we offer this. He presented a small device that looked like a piece of high-tech jewelry, a precision environmental monitor, engineered to last 100 years. Like our partnership, built to endure beyond our lifetimes. As Keisha accepted the device, Weber spoke in German, then English. You taught us that efficiency without empathy is merely speed without direction. Ambassador Dubois approached with characteristic French flair, carrying a bottle of wine that seemed to glow in the ballroom lights. From the vineyards of Champagne, he announced, aged in our first completely carbon-neutral facility. A toast to the future we will build together. He paused, his voice becoming uncharacteristically emotional. Mademoiselle Williams, you have shown us that diplomacy is not about hiding who we are, but about celebrating what we become together. The Arabic representative, Ambassador al-Rashid, carried forward a small plant in an ornate pot. From the deserts of our homeland, he said in accented English, a tree that grows in impossible conditions by finding water others cannot see. Like you, Miss Williams, finding solutions others could not imagine. The Chinese delegation leader, Dr. Carter, approached last, carrying a scroll that seemed ancient yet somehow contemporary. From China, We offer innovation rooted in wisdom. He unrolled the scroll to reveal sustainable technology blueprints written in traditional calligraphy. Old knowledge, new applications. Like your approach to old problems. Sterling stepped forward, his voice carrying across the ballroom with the authority of genuine conviction. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to Keisha Williams, our new Director of International Cultural Relations. Applause erupted from every corner of the room. Hotel staff who had gathered in doorways clapped with tears in their eyes. Environmental activists outside began cheering as news spread through social media. But the most important moment came when Sterling's assistant brought out a tablet showing a video call. "Keisha," Sterling said softly, "someone wants to see this." The screen revealed Grandmother Evelyn in her hospital bed, surrounded by nurses who had stayed past their shifts to watch the ceremony. Her eyes sparkled with the same brightness Keisha remembered from childhood. "Baby girl," Grandmother Evelyn's voice cracked with emotion, speaking English peppered with Spanish endearments. "I see you up there on the television, talking to the whole world in all our languages." The ballroom fell silent as the world's most powerful people listened to an elderly black woman in a hospital bed. "40 years I cleaned those hotel rooms," she continued, her voice growing stronger. 40 years I listened to important people talk about important things. But I never saw anyone as important as you are right now." Keisha's tears flowed freely. "Abuela, we did it. All your languages, all your dreams, they're here." "No, mija," Grandmother Evelyn smiled. "You did it. You took an old woman's stories and built bridges to heaven." The grandmother began speaking in all 6 languages, switching between them like musical movements. "Te veo, je te vois. Ikse arak, wakandeni, anata ga miemasu." I see you, baby. In every language, in every heart. The whole world sees you now. When the video call ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the ballroom. The signing ceremony that followed felt like a celebration rather than a formal diplomatic process. Each ambassador signed in their native script while sharing a traditional blessing for the earth. Sterling signed last, but not before making an announcement that stunned even his own board members. Effective immediately, the Sterling Foundation will fund the Keisha Williams Bridge Builder Scholarship, SISE, full education funding for working students from immigrant families who want to study international relations. Social media exploded. Number Bridge Builder began trending globally. LinkedIn shares exceeded 10 million. Universities worldwide began reaching out with speaking requests. But the moment that made viewers rewatch and share came when Keisha walked back to the service hallway where her housekeeping cart still Saturday. She found Maria, the night cleaner who had covered her shifts. "Maria," Keisha said in Spanish, embracing the surprised woman, "tell me about your dreams. The world is ready to listen." The cameras captured Maria's face lighting up as she whispered, "I want to be a teacher." "Then let's make that happen," Keisha replied. The symbolic transformation was complete. From invisible service worker to internationally recognized bridge builder in 72 hours. But more importantly, she had opened a door that could never be closed again. The world was finally ready to see the brilliance that had always been there, hidden in plain sight behind uniforms and humble smiles. The ballroom erupted in final applause as 6 nations, united in honest partnership, committed to healing the planet through the power of seeing each other truly. 1 year later, the morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of Keisha Williams' corner office at the United Nations Environmental Council. Her grandmother's notebook sat framed on the mahogany desk, its worn pages now protected behind museum-quality glass. The Honest Climate Accord had exceeded every projection. Carbon emissions are down 50 million tons. 6 nations working in unprecedented harmony. But the real transformation ran deeper than environmental data. Keisha's phone buzzed with a familiar video call notification. Grandmother Evelyn's face appeared, glowing with health that had surprised every doctor. "Mija, I just saw the news about the African expansion," she said in the mixture of English and Spanish that still felt like home. 12 more countries joining the partnership? 14, actually, Keisha smiled. Turns out honest conversation works in every language. Through her office windows, she could see the Grand Meridian Hotel across the city. Sterling had transformed the entire hospitality industry. Hotels worldwide now had hidden talent recognition programs. Maria, the night cleaner who had covered Keisha's shifts, was now educational coordinator, helping staff pursue forgotten dreams. The intercom buzzed. "Miss Williams, the Youth Climate Council meeting is starting." As Keisha walked toward the conference room, she passed the wall of invisible heroes, 18-2, hundreds of photos of hotel housekeepers who became cultural consultants, security guards who designed conflict resolution programs, kitchen staff who revolutionized sustainable food systems. They were always there, she would tell visitors. We just needed eyes to see them. That afternoon's Youth Climate Council brought together teenagers whose voices had been overlooked, refugees who designed water purification systems, indigenous youth whose traditional knowledge prevented forest fires, inner-city kids who turned abandoned lots into carbon-capturing gardens. After the session, Keisha returned to her grandmother's apartment in Brooklyn. The medical bills were paid, the eviction notices were gone. But most importantly, the small kitchen table still held the same warmth where dreams had been nurtured in 6 languages. "Tell me," Grandmother Evelyn said as they shared dinner, "what impossible thing are you going to make possible tomorrow?" Keisha pulled out a new notebook, fresh pages waiting to be filled. "Tomorrow, I want to teach the world what you taught me. How to see the people everyone else walks past. How to notice that every person serving coffee, cleaning floors, or answering phones might be carrying the solution to problems we don't even know how to solve yet." Grandmother Evelyn smiled, picking up her pen. "Baby girl, that's not tomorrow's lesson. That's today. That's every day." As they began filling new pages with wisdom in 6 languages, the city hummed around them with 8 million stories waiting to be heard, 8 million bridges waiting to be built, 8 million invisible people waiting to be seen. Look around your workplace tomorrow, your hotel, your restaurant, your office building. Who's invisible to you? That person serving your coffee might speak 6 languages. The security guard might have engineering expertise. The cleaning staff might hold keys to problems you can't solve. Practical action. Start one conversation this week. Ask someone about their story. Learn about their dreams. Say "I see you" in whatever language matters to them. Notice the people you walk past every day without seeing. Excellence hides behind every uniform, every humble role, every quiet smile. Viewer engagement. Who's the most underestimated person in your workplace? Tag them below and tell them they matter. Share a time when someone saw your hidden potential when everyone else overlooked you. Like if you believe genius works everywhere, in housekeeping, security, kitchens, and every corner where people serve others. Long-term initiative. Support organizations that help overlooked talent find opportunities to shine. The Bridge Builder Foundation connects invisible excellence with visible opportunity. Call to action. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the extraordinary hiding in the ordinary. Share this video with someone who needs to remember their worth. Comment below, who's brilliant in your life that the world hasn't discovered yet? Quotable closing line. Every human being you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about and hiding a talent you can't imagine. The revolution starts when you choose to see.